Well, a very good afternoon to you, everyone. Welcome to our Coaching Cafe today. It's Natalie Ashdown here with you from Open Door Coaching, and it's great to see everyone coming on the line. Today, our conversation is around dealing with underperformance. So, how does coaching create that uplift that we need to see? Before I begin, let me acknowledge the traditional owners and the custodians on the lands on which we're all meeting today, and their continuing connection to the land, waters, and communities of Australia. Pay our respects to them and to their elders, past, present, and emerging. And as always, I always think how wonderful it is that we can all meet on different lands over this technology, particularly when it's working. So here we go. So that's me in full Zoom mode. I used to have my corporate photo there, and I thought, oh, let's just keep this real. That's what it looks like when I'm delivering over Zoom. Today, we want to think about the impact of underperformance in the workplace. We want to think about changing the approach to the conversations that we're having and a real focus on coaching. That's what we're here for today, to think, well, how can we use our coaching skills to improve that underperformance? Um, if you are new to our Coaching Cafe, welcome. We are all about sharing, creating a great community. We're about sharing a learned experience and having our thought-provoking conversations as well. If you are interested in achieving or collecting your ICF CCEUs, you are welcome to do that. There's no charge for that. We do that free of charge as a way of giving back to the community. And you can just contact us at support@opendoorcoaching.com.au if you want those CCEs. So, Carolyn, you mentioned that you've got no audio. You're not sure what to do. Can everyone just let me know that you can hear me okay? And it might just be an issue just with Carolyn there. Thanks, Tara. Oh, perfect. Guy, Sharon, Ian, Nicole, Di. Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. I'm glad you can hear me. That's perfect. I'll just pop a note back to Carolyn. It looks like she's having some individual issues there. Not sure everyone else can hear. All righty. Oh, thanks, Charmaine. You can hear me as well. That's fantastic. Great. Well, there you go. So if you are new to the Coaching Cafe, welcome. As you can tell, we do hold these sessions live, and it's every Friday Melbourne time at this time, 12 noon. And of course, it's wonderful to see our alumni, everyone coming back. As always, please jump into the chat box. I am super happy to pick up your comments and to learn from you as well. So if you'd like to interact with me and the rest of everyone who's on the line today, please just pop a message into the chat box. I can pick up your comments and I can pick up your thoughts, questions as we go along. So jump in, don't hold back. Here we go. So I was reflecting on the impact of underperformance in the workplace, people that aren't performing at level, that they're not really bringing what we need to. I was thinking it in terms of the impact on us as managers of these people. And the one thing that comes up, and in the conversations I've had, one of the major things that comes up is we spend a disproportionate amount of time trying to work on that underperformance, trying to help that person around underperformance and manage the issue of underperformance. And the manager then has little time often for doing their own jobs. And also little less time also for focusing on the high performers as well. So if you're thinking about underperformers and where you've had to kind of manage that process, tell me in the chat box there what you've experienced as well. So a disproportionate amount of time, spending all my time trying to help these underperformers, little time to do some other stuff that I need to. And it's very stressful. It's stressful for everyone involved, actually, not just the manager. I'm thinking about the impact on the team. Um, in our experience, when we've been coaching around this space, our experience is that the team feel like they're being dragged down. They need to pick up the slack. They're doing everything. They're trying to pick up the slack of the people that aren't actually performing, and it starts to cause resentment, actually. it starts to go, well, why am I working my backside off and other people aren't? And so whenever we've had conversations around performance, this is the kind of feeling that we start to get from the team. Of course, when we think about the individual who is actually not performing or not performing the way we want them to, very demotivating process. Quite often those performance plans or performance improvement plans or PIPs or whatever, they have the opposite effect of actually helping a person change their performance. They kind of go a bit backwards. So it can be quite a demotivating process, and people kind of fall into that space of, well, what's the point? Nothing's ever good enough. I'm never going to please you. Some of that, as we talk about on our Certificate 4 in Workplace and Business Coaching, that real below the line, blaming others, that kind of behavior as well. So it's a really difficult time. There's a lot of impact across the board when we think about it. Please feel free to pop a message into the chat box there when you're thinking about it as well. And Guy, yeah, I agree with you. Actually, just throw your comments in there. There's no, wrong or right. We're here to really share our ideas with each other. You say that nothing kills team engagement faster than unaddressed poor performance. That's the difficult thing too. If it's let go, then that kills the team engagement, as you say. Yeah. So nothing kills team engagement faster than unaddressed poor performance. So it's very difficult if a manager doesn't get onto it, isn't it? And the impact that has on the team, the individual. The individual may never know that they're not performing at the level. And I agree with you, Alexandra. You say it begins to spiral downwards. We've worked with organisations where managers will just hold on and wait till the person just transfers out, or they move on naturally, or they retire or something like that. It's a very difficult time. Yeah. Di, thanks for jumping in there. You said it's hard for managers as they could be managing the performance, but the team doesn't see it, or they're not aware of what's happening behind the scenes. Yes, that's very true, actually. It's very true. So that performance management is a confidential process, so people won't see what's actually happening. You can't talk about it, so the team doesn't see it. They're not aware of what's happening behind the scenes, so that has an impact as well. They think nothing's been done. Yeah. Thanks, Sharon. Yeah, thanks for letting us know as well. People, if you want to actually see the comments coming up in the chat, feel free to actually just select panelists and attendees in the drop down. Otherwise, I'm picking them up. If you send it directly to panelists, I'm picking them up. But if you send it to panelists and attendees, that's totally fine as well. Thanks for that pickup. All right, so what to do? We've got a good handle on the impact, but what are we to do about it? Now, there's lots of great coaches on the line. You're all fabulous coaches, heaps of experience on the line, so feel free to jump in here as well. Here are some of the ideas that we have around this, and a lot of you would have heard these ideas. It's good to reflect on them as well. Oh, just before we go on though, what we're talking about is quite troubling. And the reason for that is because it picks up from what Di is saying there. Quite often we're trying to do the right thing around performance conversations. And it's interesting though, Gallup did a study around that, around performance reviews. And some of the statistics here, I've got the link there for you. I really enjoy going to Gallup and looking at the research that they produced, gallup.com. They found that only 14% of employees strongly agree that their performance reviews inspire them to improve. So the problem we have that's quite troubling is sometimes even when we're doing performance reviews, only a small percentage of employees actually strongly agree that those performance reviews are inspiring them to improve. Here's another interesting statistic. Some of you, I'm sure, will agree with this hands down, that only 14.5% of managers strongly agree that they are effective at giving feedback. So here's the troubling thing. We know we have to deal with the underperformance, but only 14.5% of managers strongly agree in the first place that they're effective at giving feedback. So, and we need to be able to give the feedback in order to deal with the underperformance. How about this as a statistic? So it can cost between 2.4 million to $35 million a year in lost working hours for an organization of about 10,000 employees to take part in performance evaluations. So if performance reviews, performance evaluations aren't being done properly, it can cost the organization an absolute enormous amount of money. And then I think that's troubling, because if we're spending that money and we've still got underperformance going on, even if we're doing these performance evaluations, but they're not effective, you've got this whole spiraling effect. So that's where we go, all right, so how can we address this? What to do about that? Sebastian, thanks for jumping in there. You said the manager needs to consider how to message the team on an individual's underperformance. The individual conversations generally should be confidential. The team needs to consider what they can be doing to support the underperformer rather than leaving it all to their manager. Yeah, I agree. And Ian, you've said there the underperformed obviously had the potential to do the work, but what's holding them back for bringing out their best? Yeah, so I love those questions. Thank you for referencing bring out their best as well. It's I agree with you, Ian. I think people have potential. It's about what do we do as coaches to understand what's holding them back and to really bring out their best as well. Yeah. Great. First thing we want to think about, here's some of the ideas we've got. Jump in as well. Changing our wording and changing our focus. So people will say to me, what do we do with the underperformers? I've got a person who's underperforming. Let's discuss your underperformance. So what do we do with underperformers? Let's discuss your underperformance. So if someone said to me, let's discuss your underperformance, even I would find it difficult to go, oh yeah, let's do that. Great, I'm motivated to do that. So any kind of wording that actually talks specifically about, so you're underperforming, we need to discuss this. We're thinking about the impact on the person. Does it motivate them to have the conversation, or does it actually demotivate them? So this is something to think about. We wonder whether we might be able to change our wording here as well. So rather than talking about your underperformance, let's think about it from a coaching perspective here as well. Let's think about, rather than saying, what do I do with my underperformers? We're changing our wording here. And some of you will have heard this already, but it's good to have a think about it again. What do we really actually want? So what is it we want? We want the person to shift, lift, raise, change, improve their performance. That's what we want. We want to, as Ian says, we want to bring out the best in that person. We want to identify what's holding them back, and where do they want to be? How can we bring out the best in that person? So maybe a change of wording here, rather than what do you do with people who are underperformers, we think about what do we do? How do we coach those people who need to change, shift, lift, raise, improve their performance? Now, those words are much more likely to have a better impact. So we need to change the performance. We need to lift the performance. We need to raise the performance. And I'm here to help you do that, here to support you, here to coach you through it. You know, those kind of wordings start to become a conversation that's much more attractive to actually have. I agree with you, Guy. If you start to do that, those more frequent conversations, so weekly work in progress sessions with direct reports, you've said here to have a chat about challenges that they're having or that you might be observing, and how can we move past that? What do you need? What support do you need? All of those good coaching conversations, all of those opportunities, I think can really help us in this space as well. Yeah. So I've heard people say to me, I've got a person who's underperforming. What do I do about that? So again, the reframe kicks in here to go, well, I have a person who needs to change, shift, lift, raise, whatever word you want to use. I've got a person who needs to change their performance. They need to shift their performance. They need to lift their performance. What would you recommend around that? So already we're starting to use wording that is more targeted to actually towards what we actually want. And if you have a person who says, well, let's discuss your underperformance, I would much prefer, let's talk about a shift in your performance from where you are now to where you need to be. And I want to sit down with you and discuss the options that you have to get there. So sometimes people might think this is a bit, beating around the bush. It's a bit indirect. It's a bit, wishy-washy. I'm like, no, actually, it is about thinking about where do we want that person to be? The reality is this is where they are now. And of course, just kick in our grow model to go, well, what options do we have to be there? We're not shirking the reality and the responsibility of discussing where we are now, but the coaching is about focused on where we need to be and what options do we need to get there. So it looks like this. This is where we are now. So what the approach that we prefer is this is where we need to be. This is where I need you to be. This is what the high performance looks like. This is the level that you need to be working at. This is what's happening now. So I need to sit down. We need to sit down. Can we have a conversation about what needs to shift, what needs to change, what needs to lift, what needs to raise, what needs to improve, what options do we have? Now, here the coaching kicks in when we're asking the person, what options do you have? Where do you think you can improve? These kind of questions to generate the options. We're asking the person whose performance we're discussing, rather than, necessarily telling and directing them all the time about what they need to do. Guy, you've picked up a good point there too. We don't have a lot of time to discuss it, but you've mentioned here, have a think too about whether the underperformance or the failure to meet the necessary standard is a matter of skill or will. And yes, I agree with you there, actually. Ian said it's important to get under the surface, and I've got some other slides on that, which we can cover at another session, but we can ask some coaching questions to really get under the surface. What is going on here? What's holding them back? What is this a matter of skill? Is it a matter of knowledge? Is it a matter of willingness? Is it a matter of they've tried? Do they have stuff going on at home? There could be a whole myriad of reasons why someone is not performing. Are they not clear about the job description? There's plenty of reasons. So in our coaching, we can get under the surface of that as well, to find out what's really going on. And I see that as being part of reality. So where are we now? What's holding you back? What's getting in your way? What's unclear to you? All of those great coaching questions kick in then as well. Great. Di, I agree with you. You've said coming back to the positive intention helps the conversation. Now, positive intention, for those of you that have worked, that have looked at the Certificate for in Workplace and Business Coaching, you'll know we talk about that a lot. What are we actually trying to achieve with this person? What is the higher purpose? What's the positive intention? And, our positive intention is to bring out the best in the person, is to have them perform at a high level, is to create high performance within the workplace. It's to have the person feeling happy, motivated, inspired, glad to come to work. So if any of those are our positive intentions, then we're leading with that in terms of the conversation we're having. And then what options do we have? What options do you have, i.e., employee, staff member, team member? What options do you have to start to move towards that? Adam, yes, you've mentioned an important point there too. So you said that some people are willing, but the confidence issues can manifest as poor performance. Yeah, so it's interesting, isn't it, to get under the surface there? Is this poor performance a matter of confidence? They're willing, but they don't have the confidence to do it. They're missing something from that point of view. Yeah. And I agree with you, Guy. Rather than approaching it as a punitive process, how can we approach this as performance? We all have to manage our performance. We all can be on performance plans. So performance plans are not just something we do with people who are not at level. We're all on plans to be high performing in the workplace. Yeah. Great thinking. Thanks for jumping in, everyone. All right, so it does then speak to it, doesn't it? The kind of mindset that we might have, and moving away from those remedial discussions, as you said, Guy, the punitive process where we're telling, directing, eroding confidence, people feeling unmotivated, uh, moving away from conversations where people are focused on weaknesses, what the employee is not doing, why haven't you done this, kind of banging their head up against a brick wall. And the coaches on the line will know that moving towards a coaching discussions where we are focused on what we want to see. We are big believers, for what it's worth, in that the employee writes the plan. So if it's the employee that is the subject of these conversations that writes the plan rather than the managers writing the plan. So you think about it, if the employee says, this is where I need to be, this is my goals, I've worked with my manager, I'm writing out my plan to get there. That builds accountability and responsibility. It means that they're now responsible for their performance and they can have a think about what support do they need to get there. I think this is one of the big mistakes we make in the workplace, for what it's worth, where the manager writes up the plans, puts all the things down, goes to all that work and effort to put the plans in place, which the employee then has to sign. And I'm just wondering, well, how does that build accountability and responsibility in the actual person? Now, it's not to say that the manager takes no responsibility and just, goes, well, you write the plan and whatever. We're not doing a hands-off approach here, but I think there's got to be much more responsibility on the part of the employee. Now, of course, we're not talking about those kind of situations where the person's been set up for failure, or like, as managers, we've got to take a lot of responsibility for this as well. Have we been having the feedback conversations? Have we been, effectively managing the performance? So it's quite complex, isn't it? But I think anything where we can do to help the person, put the responsibility where it needs to be. We're all responsible. I'm not saying, well, it's your responsibility. I don't have responsibility as a manager. I still have responsibility, but it's about, let's have a think about who's the best person to be documenting, writing the plan, reporting back, those kind of things. Sebastian says, the punitive process may happen because of the link to the disciplinary process. Yeah, you're right. You said, even in the disciplinary process, a Fair Work Act requires employers to show they've done everything reasonable to help the person get back on track. Yes, that's right. So I think that's where, managers are doing everything they can. They're writing the plans, they're sitting down, they're having the discussions. So I agree with it, that they're doing everything that is reasonable, coaching the person, et cetera, et cetera. I'm also interested in what the person is doing as well to help themselves get back on track. I'm not abdicating responsibility here, don't get me wrong. It's just, this has to be a joint process, doesn't it? We have to work together around this. So yeah, and it's quite complex, as you say, with Fair Work, et cetera. Yeah. And Ian, I think that's a very important conversation. Is the manager creating a psychologically safe workplace? Is this a psychologically safe workplace where we can have these conversations, where we can work on this together? It's quite complex, isn't it? I need to feel psychologically safe within my workplace without fear of retribution and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I've been doing a bit of reading about that too. It might be a good coaching cafe to have down the track. So we're moving towards coaching conversations. We do have to set up a psychologically safe workplace. We do have to make it a workplace. Anne said, yes, let's have that conversation. We do have to make it a workplace where people, are working without fear as well. So that changing the approach, interestingly, everyone's been jumping in around these frequent conversations as well. So having weekly feedback, changing the approach. Gallup found that when we're having weekly feedback, it's 5.2 times more likely to strongly agree that they're receiving meaningful feedback. So when we're giving more weekly feedback, more regular feedback, of course we're nipping any underperformance in the bud, but the feedback is seemed to be more meaningful. 3.2 times more likely to strongly agree they're motivated to do more outstanding work. Now, isn't this interesting? So when managers provide weekly feedback, the team members are more likely to strongly agree that they're motivated to do outstanding work. So here's another interesting thing about changing our mindset about how we give that feedback, the frequency that we give it. And that's an approach actually to work with people who are not at the level we need to as well. So giving meaningful feedback as we go along. And they're more likely to be engaged at work. So we're moving away from those annual events, lack of preparation, lack of enthusiasm, unplanned discussions, towards regular conversations, more dynamic conversations. Conversations where we're partnering around this, where the team members taking responsibility and I'm taking responsibility as a manager as well. Breaking down the conversation into manageable chunks, trying to encourage communication, trying to encourage trust and that safe workspace. And then kicking in our practical coaching tools as well. So any of our coaching that we've talked about, any of those great coaching questions we've talked about so far, this is really that's where we're making that shift to what it is we need in order to approach the performance. You notice I've dropped underperformance. So to approach the performance, to approach what we want to see. We want people to be working at their best. We want to be bringing out the best in people. So what does it need in terms of a change of approach around that? That's the question. I've even had managers say to me, I've tried everything. I've tried everything. I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. And interestingly enough, the only thing they haven't really tried is that really great coaching approach. To go, well, what options do we have? What options do you have to coach the actual person to where they need to be? Quite often the manager is solutionizing, jumping in, trying to fix this problem. Quite often the manager is under pressure to fix this problem. And that's what we're looking at. How can we get a bit of a shift here? Of course, some of you will know in our Cert 4 program, we have the start, stop, more of, less of model, comes as an adaptation of the Agile coaching. And so when we're enabling those conversations with the person, we can kick off by saying, what do we need to start doing? What do you need to stop doing? So we're coaching around this now. What do you need to start doing to start moving towards where we need you to be? What do you need to do more of? It's actually a very good feedback loop as well to ask the person, what do you need to stop doing in order to achieve what you need to do in terms of that shift, that change in performance? What do you need to stop doing, or what do you need to do less of? So as you know, I love a 2x2 matrix. You can draw this up as a 2x2 matrix: start, stop, more of, less of. You know that I use this for everyday performance as well. If I'm trying to achieve something in my everyday, or I'm trying to achieve some of these big goals, what do I need to start doing, stop doing, do more of, and do less of? And I can guarantee under more of, for me, it's always more communication. More communication. I need to communicate more. So even if I'm thinking about how do I lift my performance on an everyday basis, 100% you always have to write communication under there. Always have to kick it off with, well, how can I communicate more? How can I share what I'm thinking more with the people around me? So there you go. Welcome me any final thoughts or comments. I know these coaching cafes go so fast, don't they? We come together, for 30 minutes, sharing these ideas, grabbing your thoughts and comments is just so great. I really am so energized every week to come together. Just a cartoon there too from good old Dilbert. Alrighty. So if yourselves or your managers, your team are interested, we do have our great 2-day program there, Coaching for Performance Conversations, where we dig into actually not only underperformance, but what a really good performance conversations will look like. So more than happy to talk to anyone about that as we go along. And I agree with you, Guy. Thanks for saying. He says it's a great session. Could chat all day about this stuff. Yeah, it's quite complex, isn't it? So I think one of the best things we can do is do what we're doing here. Let's have the conversation. Let's kick it off. Let's work together, and let's have a think about how do we approach that from a mindset point of view, from a coaching point of view. So fantastic. And yes, thank you for those of you that you've heard this before. It is a great reminder. Like I see start, stop, more of, less of, and I'm thinking, yeah, more communication. Let's do that. So yes. And please do go to the Gallup. There's some very good, Gallup.com, some very good research there to back up what you're thinking about as well. So terrific. Thanks, everyone. Wonderful to have you join us. If you're listening to this on our podcast, I hope you've enjoyed your run or your walk or whatever you might be doing while you're listening. Thanks very much for joining us. And I look forward to catching up with you all at our next Coaching Cafe. So thank you. It's been great to have your input today.